This is what I've been waiting for. And there is nothing better than a new hoodie, that new hoodie smell, if you will. Now let's take a look at this thing. This thing is awesome. All right, let's change it up, shall we? What the F? Oh my gosh, what? Well, this doesn't work. Hang on, let's fix that.
Whoa, there we go.
Much better, and look at that. That is awesome. Makes sense too. I mean, the video's called What the F, and we're talking Fstop today. But you know what? The new merchandise just came in, and it is available on my website. So if you want a super soft hoodie, keep you warm, but not too heavy so you can wear it casually and rock this awesomeness, then go ahead and check out my website. But let's get started with the video. Will Simpson here, and welcome to Exploring Photography. Today we're gonna go over Fstop and Aperture. And yes, I have a couple of videos on it, but we're gonna try and do it fast and quick. That way, for all of you guys who just wanna touch up on it, or if you're just learning, we're gonna go over it super quick. The key is remember to go practice it, because you're not gonna get good at this setting by just simply watching videos. You have to practice it to see how it affects different situations. So I'm gonna teach you all the information about it, and then I want you to go out and I want you to practice. So the first thing about it is, what is aperture? Aperture is the opening in the lens. Now, it is not the actual setting itself, it's just the size of the opening in the lens. And this is controlled by aperture blades, which are usually black metal blades that adjust the size opening in the lens. Now, how does it relate to f-stop? Well, f-stop is the fractional measurement of that opening. So your F number, your 2.8 or 3.5 or 16 or whatnot, is the actual measurement of that opening. Now, the larger the opening, the smaller the number. And this is because it comes down to fractions. So if you have a F2, you have a half opening. Whereas if you have an F8, you have an eighth of an opening. So it makes sense that the larger the number, the smaller the opening. The smaller the number, the larger the opening. Now, what do they affect? Well, they affect the amount of light let in, and they affect the depth of field of your image. So the smaller the f-stop, the bigger the opening, the more light's let in. The larger the f-stop, the smaller the opening, the less light is let in. Now, this also affects depth of field, which is the first and last point of focus. So if you have a small f-stop, then you have a small depth of field. If you have a large f-stop, you have a very broad depth of field. And this is primarily important to know when you're shooting like portraits. You want a low f number, so you get a really shallow depth of field, because that gives you a really nice blurry background. Now, if you have a large f-stop, like a 16 or 22, most of the image as a whole will be in focus, and you're not gonna get that blurry effect. That blurry effect is actually called bokeh. It's a really soft background where everything is kind of out of focus, and it really pulls attention to your subject, which is really nice. It kind of coats them in a nice, soft surrounding, kind of like this hoodie. The other thing to know is that f-stop and aperture are actually determined by your lens, not your camera. Your camera controls the setting, adjusts the setting, but it depends on your lens for the f-stop. Higher quality lenses generally have a lower f-stop, and that's one of the primary reasons they're more expensive. It gives you a larger range. You might have seen some lenses say like 18 to 55 millimeter, and then the f-stop says 3.5 to 5.6. What this means is that 18 millimeters, you can have a 3.5 f-stop, but as you increase your millimeters up to 55, you're forced to have a minimum f-stop of 5.6. This doesn't affect the maximum f-stop, it just affects the minimum f-stop. And that's why you see on kit lenses or less expensive lenses that they have like a minimum f number that you can work with. The more expensive the lens, generally, but not always, the lower the f number can be. For example, some lenses are like 16 to 35 f2.8, which means they can be at 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter or anything in between, 2.8, whereas some lenses like the 18 to 55, 3.5 to 5.6 are forced to have a varying minimum f-stop. The other thing to note is just because you have a low f-stop does not mean you're gonna have an immediate blurry background. Distance comes into play also. So if you have your subject and your subject is right up against your background, it's gonna be kind of in focus. But the farther away the background is from your subject and the lower the f-stop, the more you're gonna get that blurry background. This can also come into play with millimeters. If you're shooting like a 16, a wide angle, and you have your subject here and the background way back here, then it might be in more focus because it's a wider angle. However, if you shoot a 200 and you focus on the subject, the background is the same distance, that background is gonna be really, really blurry and it's gonna look really, really good. This is why I love shooting portraits at about 110 at a 2.8. They are so crispy sharp. It is incredible. And the bokeh, the blur is beautiful. Now, if you haven't noticed,
f1.8, f2.8, f8, and
f16. So you can see that is actually how they work. And don't worry, f-stop and aperture are probably the most confusing setting. Shutter speed, piece of cake. ISO, piece of cake. But f-stop and aperture are probably the most confusing because of this reason right here, which is why, what the F, guys? What the F? Anyways, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. That primarily goes over everything you need to know about f-stop and aperture. Even though I talked really, really fast, you can go back, watch the video again, take it piece by piece, and then go practice it because it is probably, if not, the most important setting. Because again, the other two, super easy. This one, once you get down, you will master your camera that much faster. So if you like the video, go ahead and give it a like, comment if you have any questions, and go ahead and subscribe. I do videos like this every Monday at 7 p.m. And then I want you to go to the website and get your Exploring Photography awesome hoodie, What the F hoodie. Hope you guys are doing good. I'll see you next week.